Hello. Today we're going to be reading some Pythagoras from Plato, or by Plato. Just let me share my screen. Plato's Protagoras. Where are you coming from, Socrates? Or is it quite obvious that you have been pursuing the youthful glory of Alcibiades? And yet when I saw him just the other day, he seemed already like a fine man to me. Yes, a man he is, Socrates, since between ourselves his beard is starting to grow. What of it? You are an admirer of Homer, aren't you? And he says that a youth is at his most gracious when the beard is starting to grow. The stage Alcibiades is up now. Well, what's going on these days? Is it him you are coming from? How is the young man disposed towards you? Nicely, in my opinion, anyway. Especially today, for he said a great deal to support and assist me. And yes, indeed, I have just been with him. Yet I want to tell you something unusual, for although Alcibiades was present, I paid no attention to him, and indeed, on occasion, I forgot he was even there. What could have happened to the two of you to bring this about? For surely you have not met someone else more beautiful, not in this city anyway. Very much so. Yes, much more so. What are you saying? Is he a citizen or a foreigner? A foreigner. Where is he from? Abdera. So, two things here. Alcibiades, the son of Clinias, was a prominent and controversial Athenian statesman, orator in general. He was a close associate of Socrates. There are two dialogues that bear his name, which have been attributed to Plato, and he appears as a character in a number of others. Abdera was a flourishing city in the city of Thrace, on the north coast of the Aegean. And did you think this foreigner such a beauty that he appeared more beautiful to you than the son of Clinias? But how, blessed man, could the wisest avoid appearing more beautiful? What is this, Socrates? Have you been in the company of some wise man just now? Yes, the wisest of them all nowadays, presumably provided you think the wisest of them all is Pythagoras. What are you saying? Is Protagoras in town? Yes, he has been here for 2 days already. So have you just come from being with the man? I have indeed. And I said and heard a great deal. Well, why don't you recount the meeting to us, if there is no reason to not to do so? Sit down here. This slave will give you a seat. Yes, of course. I would be grateful if you would. I would be grateful if you would listen to me, and we could also be grateful to you if you would speak. Then the gratitude will be mutual. Anyway, listen. Last night, just before daybreak, Hippocrates, the son of Apollodorus and brother of Phason, banged on my door very forcibly with his stick, and when someone opened it for him, he rushed straight in, shouting in a loud voice, "Socrates, are you awake or asleep?" I recognized his voice and said, "Hippocrates, this man, I hope you are not bearing some bad news." "Not at all," he said. "The news is good." "It would be nice if you would tell me what it is," I said, "and the reason you have called at this hour." He stood beside me and said, "Pythagoras has arrived." "The day before yesterday," I said. "Have you just found this out?" "Yes, by the gods," he said. "Last evening, in fact." And the last time he felt around the top of the couch, sat down at my feet and said, "Yes. Last evening I got back very late from Onia, for my slave, Statarius, had run away. And indeed, I intended to tell you that I would be going after him, but something else made me forget to do so. It was when I was back home, and we had eaten supper, and were about to get some rest, that my brother told me that Pythagoras had arrived. I was even prepared to come to you right away, but then I thought it was much too late at night. Yet as soon as the sleep had relieved me of the fatigue, I got up immediately and made my way here, being aware of his impetuousness and excitability, I asked, well, what has that to do with you? Pythagoras has not done you some injustice, has he? So Protagoras of Abdera was an influential sophist and teacher in rhetoric. Sophist and teacher of rhetoric. Plato makes reference to him in a number of dialogues, and philosophical positions attributed to him are considered in the Theaetetus. Being aware of his impetuousness and inexcitability, I asked, well, what has that to do with you? Pythagoras has not done you some injustice, has he? He laughed and said, by the gods, he has, Socrates. He is the only wise man, and he will not make me wise. Oh yes, by Zeus, I said. If you pay good money to him and persuade him, he will make you wise too. By Zeus and the gods, he replied, would that it all come down to this, since in that case I would begrudge him nothing belonging to myself or even my friends. Yes, this is the very reason I came to you, to get you to discuss this with him on my behalf. For as well as being too young, I have never even seen Protagoras before, or heard him at all either, since I was still a child when he visited the city before. Anyway, Socrates, everyone praises the man and proclaims him the wisest of speakers. So why don't we make our way with him now, so that we may be sure to find him indoors? I hear that he is staying with Callicles, the son of Hipponicus. So let us go. And I said, let us not go there yet, my good man, for it is still early. Instead, let us get up and go out into the courtyard here, walk about and pass the time until it becomes light. Then we may go. In fact, Protagoras spends most of his time indoors, so do not worry. That is quite likely where we shall find him. After that, we went out into the courtyard and walked about, and to test the resolve of Hippocrates, I probed him by asking questions. Tell me, Hippocrates, I asked, at the moment you are trying to gain access to Protagoras, and you will pay money to the man as a fee on your own behalf. What sort of person will you be visiting, and what sort of person will you become as a result? For instance, if you intend to visit your own namesake, the Asclepid Hippocrates of Kos, and to pay money to him on your own behalf as a fee, and someone asked you, tell me, Hippocrates, you are about to pay a fee to this Hippocrates, to someone who is what? How would you reply? I would say that and this is a really important, paying a fee to someone who is a physician. So here we have at least a first definition. In order to become what? To become a physician. And if you were going to visit Polycletus of Argos or Fidesa of Athens and to pay a fee to these men on your own behalf, and someone asked you, you propose to pay this money to Polycletus and Phidias, to people who are what? What would you reply? To people who are sculptors. That is what I would say. So that you yourself may become what? A sculptor. So be it, I said. But in this present case, where you and I are visiting Protagoras, we shall be prepared to pay money to him on your behalf, provided our own funds are sufficient to persuade him. If not, we shall spend even our friends' money as well. If someone observing our extreme seriousness, excuse me, I just need to answer a text. Okay. If not, we shall spend our friends' money as well. If someone observing our extreme seriousness on these matters were to ask, tell me, Socrates and Hippocrates, you intend to pay money to Pythagoras, to someone who is what? How would you reply to him? What other name do we hear people using in relation to Pythagoras, in the same way that sculptor is used in relation to Phidias and poet in relation to Homer? What title of this sort do we hear in relation to Pythagoras? Well now, Socrates, what they say, anyway, is that the man is a sophist, he replied. So we are going to pay money to him as a sophist, certainly. Now, suppose someone were to ask you this additional question. If you yourself were to go to Pythagoras, what would you intend to become? And he replied, blushing, for the day was breaking by now, and I could see him clearly. If this is anything like the previous instances, it is obvious I intend to become a sophist. By the gods! Wouldn't you be ashamed to present yourself before the Greeks as a sophist? Yes, by Zeus, Socrates, if I really must say what I am thinking. Well, Hippocrates, perhaps this turns out not to be the kind of instruction you are expecting from Pythagoras. Were you expecting the kind of instruction you get from a teacher of writing or of the harp from a trainer? For it was not with a view to becoming a practitioner that you developed proficiency in these subjects, but to acquire an education suited to an independent free man. Very much so, he replied. And I think this is more the kind of instruction I expect from Pythagoras. Well, do you know what you are about to do now? Or has this escaped your notice, I said. In what respect? The fact is, you are about to submit your soul, your own soul, to the care of a man who you admit to be a sophist. Yet I would be surprised if you knew what precisely a sophist is. What is more, if you are unaware of this, you do not know to whom you are handing over your soul, whether the arrangement be it a good one or a bad one. I think that I know well. Tell me, what do you think a sophist is? So here we have Socrates looking for another definition. I think he said, just as the name implies, that is someone knowledgeable in matters of wisdom. So here we have a definition of a sophist. That's what they're going to be inquiring into. Isn't it also possible, I asked, to say this about painters and builders, that these are the ones who are knowledgeable in matters of wisdom? And if someone were to ask us, of what wise matters are painters knowledgeable? I presume we would say that they know about the production of images, and reply similarly about other examples. But if someone were to ask us specifically, of what wise matters is a sophist knowledgeable, how would we reply to him? What sort of process is he the master of? What else could we say he is, Socrates, except a master of turning someone into a formidable speaker? We may perhaps be speaking the truth, I remarked, without actually saying enough for our response invites further questioning as to the subject in which the sophist makes someone a formidable speaker. For example, the harp player obviously makes a person formidable in the subject about which he is knowledgeable. About harp playing, is this so? Yes, so be it. About what subject does the sophist make someone formidable in speaking? About the subject in which he himself is knowledgeable, of course. Quite likely. What then is the subject about which the sophist is knowledgeable and makes his pupil knowledgeable? By Zeus, I cannot really tell you. I then proceeded to ask, do you know the sort of danger you are going to expose your soul if you had occasion to entrust your body to someone, running the risk that it might be improved or made worse? So basically what is happening here is that what then is the subject about which the sophist is knowledgeable and makes his pupil knowledgeable? I cannot really tell you. I then proceeded to ask, Do you know the sort of danger to which you are going to expose your soul if you had occasion to entrust your body to someone, running the risk that it might be improved or made worse? Or you would think a lot about whether you should entrust it to that person or not. You would call upon the advice of your friends and family and deliberate for many days. Yet when it comes to your soul, which you value more highly than your body, and on which the good or bad unfolding of all your affairs depends according as it is improved or made worse, when it comes to this, you have consulted neither your father nor your brother, nor any of us, your companions at all, as to whether or not you should entrust your own soul to this foreigner who has arrived in town. No, you heard about him yesterday, as you say. You arrive here at daybreak, and without initiating any discussion or consultation as whether you should entrust yourself to him or not, you are ready to spend your own money and your friend's money, since you have already decided that, come what may, you must be associate of Protagoras, whom, on your own admission, you have never either known or spoken to before. You call him a sophist. You obviously do not even know what a sophist is, and yet you are about to entrust yourself to him. Quite likely, Socrates, based on what you're saying. Well, now, Hippocrates, could the sophist be a sort of merchant or retailer of the provisions by which the soul is nourished? For that is how he appears to me, anyway. What is the soul nourished by, Socrates? By what it learns, I presume. But the sophist deceives us by praising whatever he sells, just as merchants and retailers do when they deal in nutrient for the body. For these people, although they praise everything they sell, presumably do not know themselves which of the wares they deal in are beneficial or harmful to the body, nor do the people who buy from them, unless they happen to be trainers or physicians. The same applies to those who parade their learning around the cities, acting as salesmen and retailers to any eager customer. They too praise everything they sell. Yet, in all probability, some of these, my good man, are ignorant as to whether the wares they are selling are beneficial or harmful to the soul. And the same applies to the people who buy from them, unless one of them is pensioned for its part a skilled physician. So, what he's saying here is that the sophist is actually ignorant as to beneficial or harmful for the soul. Now, if you are knowledgeable as to which of these wares are beneficial or harmful, you may purchase learning in safety from Protagoras or anyone else at all. Otherwise, be aware, blessed man, lest you take chances and imperil your precious possessions, for there is surely an even greater danger in the purchase of learning than in the purchase of food. Indeed, it is possible for food and drink purchased from a retailer or merchant to be taken away in separate vessels, before admitting them into the body by drinking them or eating them. Once you have got them home, it is possible to take advice by calling upon someone who knows what we should drink or eat, and what we should not, and how much, and at what time. Consequently, there is no great danger involved in their purchase. Learning, by contrast, cannot be borne any way in a separate vessel. No, once the fee has been profited, it is necessary to take that learning into the soul itself. And once you have learned something, you must go your way, having either harmed or benefited. Well, we should consider these issues in the company of our elders, for we are too young to deal with such extensive topics. So, learning is much more dangerous. Now, however, in accordance with our plan, we should go and listen to the man. And once we have heard him, we should also consult other people too. In fact, Protagoras is not the only one there. Hippias of Elias is also there. So too, I believe, is Protagoras of Ceos, and a host of others, all wise. Once we had decided this, we went on our way. But when we got to the porch, we stood there discussing our particular argument that had occurred to us on the road. so that it would not be let unfinished, and we could bring the issue to a conclusion before going inside. So we stood in the porch and discussed it until we had come to agreement with one another. Well, I think the doorman in Enchus overheard us, but due to the provision of sophists, he was probably annoyed with the visitors to the house, since when we knocked at the door, he opened it and saw us. Ah, some more sophist. Himself is busy. At the same time, he slammed the door shut with both hands as hard as he possibly could, so we knocked again and responded, with the door still closed, saying, "Gentlemen, did you not hear me saying that he is busy?" Okay, so they're on their way now to the place. Hippias is a diplomat, a polymath, and a famous and successful sophist, and two dialogues attributed to Plato bear his name. Protagoras, a contemporary of Socrates, was a distinguished sophist who thought semantics and rhetoric. "But, my good man," I replied, "we are not visiting Chilias, nor are we sophists, so we do not worry. In fact, we have come because we want to see Pythagoras, so please announce us." So the man eventually opened the door to us with some reluctance. And when we went in, we found Protagoras walking about in the portico. Walking in line with him on one side was Callias, the son of Hipponacus, and his brother Paralus, the son of Pericles, who has the same mother, also Charmides, the son of Glaucon, and the other was Xanthipus, the other son of Pericles, Philippides, the son of Philemonius, and Antimorius from Mendi. The most highly regarded of Protagoras' pupils, one who was developing his proficiency with a view to becoming a sophist. Those who followed behind these men or listened in on the conversation seemed for the most part to be foreign, whom Protagoras had drawn from the various cities he travelled through, charming them with his voices just like Orpheus. While they followed along, enchanted by the sound, there were also some of our fellow countrymen in the chorus. When I beheld this chorus, I was especially delighted at the beautiful care with exercised, never to impede Protagoras by getting in front of him. So when he turned about along with his cohort, those eavesdroppers divided into two nicely, and in due order on either side turned in a circle, and always positioned themselves perfectly behind him once more. The next person I beheld, in Homer's phrase, was Hippias of Elis. Seated upon a raised chair in the opposite portico, seated about him on benches, were Eryximachus, the son of Acumenus, Phaedrus of Myrionus, and Andron, son of Androtion, and among the foreigners were fellow citizens of Hippias and a few others. They appeared to be questioning Hippias on astronomical issues concerning nature and the heavenly bodies, while he, seated on his chair, analyzed each of their questions and dealt with them in detail. And then I beheld Tantalus, for as it happens, Prodicus of Chios was also in town. He was in a small room which Hipponicus had previously used for storage, but Callicles had even emptied this out and turned it into a guest chamber because of the huge number of lodgers. Now Prodicus was still lying down, covered in fleeces and blankets. There seemed to be a lot of them. Sitting beside him on one of the adjacent couches was Pausanias from Ceramees, and with Pausanias there was a young man, still a youth, whom I thought noble and good by nature, and certainly very handsome. I think I heard that his name was Agathon, and I would not be surprised if he happens to be young favourite of Pausanias. This youth was there, as were the two Adamantuses, one son of Kepis, and the other of Leucophilus, Fides, and there seemed to be some others there too. From outside, I was unable to understand what they were discussing, despite my earnest desire to listen to Protagoras, for he seemed to be an extremely wise and divine man. But because of his deep voice, there was a booming sound in the room which made everything he said unclear. We had only just arrived when right behind us came Alcibiades, the beautiful, as you call him, and I agree with you, Critias. I agree with you. Critias, the son of Callicreus, came in too. Now, once we had entered, we spent some time on a few minor issues, and when these had been dealt with, we went up to Protagoras and said, Protagoras, myself and Hippocrates here have come to meet you. Do you wish to converse alone or in the presence of others? He asked. It makes no difference to us, I replied. When you have heard the reason for our visit, you can decide for yourself. Well then, what is the purpose of your visit? Hippocrates here is one of our fellow countrymen. He is the son of Protagoras, and he belongs to the great prosperous family. While he himself seems by nature to be a match for any one of his peers, I think he wishes to attain a high reputation in the city. He believes he will best attain this if he consorts with you. So please consider at this stage whether you think we should discuss these issues privately or on our own, or in the company of others. Socrates, he replied, you are right to be cautious on my behalf. Indeed, a foreigner who arrives in great cities, persuading the best of the young folk to depart from the company of others, of family members or acquaintances, older or younger, in order to consort with himself, so that they may be improved by his company, needs to proceed carefully in so doing. For these activities generate no small measure of resentment. Okay, I just need to pause this, and I'll be back in a moment. Okay, I'm back. Socrates, he replied, you are right to be cautious on my behalf. Indeed, a foreigner who arrives in a great city persuading the best of their young folk to depart from the company of others, of family members or acquaintances, older or younger, in order to consort with himself, so that they may be improved by his company, needs to proceed carefully in so doing. For these activities generate no small measure of resentment, hostility, and intrigue. Now I say that the skill of sophistry is of ancient date, yet those men of old who turned a hand to it, fearing the offence it might cause, disguised their skill. Some, like Homer, Hesiod, and Simonides, concealed it as poetry; others, the associates of Orpheus and Muses, as rites or oracle sayings. And I have on occasion even observed people concealing it as gymnastics. Iccus of Tarentum, for instance, and the present-day sophist, as good as any, Herodicus of Slimbria, formerly of Megara, your own Agthocles, Agthocles, although he is a great sophist, adopted the disguise of a musician, as did Pythocles of Chios, and many others. All these men, as I have been saying, made use of these various skills as a screen because they were afraid of the resentment. Now, I do not agree with the approach of all these people, since I believe that they do not achieve their desired objective. For the men who exercise power in the various cities, the very people they are trying to deceive are quite aware of this subterfuge, while the masses hardly notice anything, but simply repeat the pronouncements of the men in power. Now, trying to get away with something when you are unable to get away with it, and being exposed in the attempt, is sheer folly on the part of the person who tries to do so, and of necessity provokes even greater hostility in the people, for they believe that such a person, in addition to his other failings, is also a rogue. So I have adopted an approach that is the complete opposite of theirs. I admit to being a sophist and an educator of humanity, and I regard this precautious whereby I admit it rather than deny it, as better than the other one. And I have devised other safeguards as well as this, so that with God as my witness, nothing terrible has happened to me due to my admission of being a sophist, even though I have by now been many years in the profession. Yes, indeed, I have a long life behind me, and I am old enough to be the father of anyone here. So if you wish to pursue these issues, I would be very pleased to conduct the discussion in front of everyone in the house. I suspected that he wished to put on a show before Protagoras and Hippias, and take pride in the fact that they were admirers of his. So this is something that is very interesting. Putting on a show. Status. Who had come to join him. So I said, why don't we invite Protagoras and Hippias and the people with them to listen into our discussion? Yes, certainly, he replied. Well, said Chilias, would you like us to arrange a meeting place so that you may sit down and conduct your discussion? That seemed the thing to do, and we were all pleased at the prospect of listening to wise men. So we too picked up the benches and couches ourselves and arranged them beside Hippias, since the benches were to hand already. Meanwhile, Callias and Alcibiades arrived, bringing Protagoras, whom they had aroused from the couch, and Protagoras' associates too. Once we had all sat down together, Protagoras said, quote, well, Socrates, now that these people are also present, would you please elaborate upon what you mentioned to me earlier in this young man's behalf? So I replied, Protagoras, I will begin, as I did earlier, with the reason for my visit. Yes, it so happens that Hippocrates here wants to be an associate of yours, and he says that he would like to find out what benefit will accrue him if he associates with you. That is as much as we have to say. So the immediate thing that strikes me is what Hippocrates is going to learn from Protagoras and what benefit he's going to get. And the benefit is also of central concern in the Republic. So Pythagoras responded by saying, well, young man, if you associate with me, this is what you will obtain. On the very first day you will spend with me, you will go home a better man. And the same thing will happen the following day. And every day thereafter, you will continually develop for the better. So he's going to be a better man. Definition. And having heard this, I said, Protagoras, what you claim is nothing surprising. No, it is quite likely, since even you, as old as you are and as wise as you are, would become better if someone were to teach you what you did not already know. But suppose the situation were different. Suppose Hippocrates here were to change his desire suddenly and develop a desire to associate with that young man who has only recently arrived in town. Zeuxippus of Heraclea. Suppose he met him and heard from Zeuxis the same words he had just heard from you now. Every day he has with him, he will be better and developed. If you were to ask, what are you saying I shall be better at, and in what respect shall I develop? Zeuxippus replied to him would be at painting. And if he had spent time with Protagoras, the Theban, and heard from him the same responses he had heard from you, and he were to ask that man in what respect he would become better every day by spending time with him, he would reply, at flute playing. So please, respond to the young man in this way, and to me when I put the question on his behalf. Hippocrates here, on associating with Protagoras, will, on the very first day he spends with him, depart a better man, and every day thereafter will develop in this manner. But in what direction? Protagoras, and in what? In relation to what? When Protagoras had heard this, he said, you are putting your question very well, Socrates, and I enjoy responding to people who put their questions very well. You see, if Hippocrates comes to join me, he will not suffer what he would have to suffer by spending time with any other sophist. In fact, the others mistreat the young people. For no sooner do they get away from their various skills than these sophists draw them back in once more again, against their will, immersing them in the skills by teaching them calculation, astronomy, geometry, and music. And as he said this, he glanced at Hippias. Yet once he comes to me, he will learn nothing except what he came to learn. And the subject matter is sound judgment in relation to private affairs and in relation to civic affairs. How he may best manage his own household, and how his words and deeds may be extremely influential over the business of the city. So am I following what you are saying? I asked. You seem to me to be describing a political skill and promising to produce men who are good citizens. That, Socrates, is precisely the profession I profess. So here we have another maybe quasi-definition that Protagoras is developing a political skill. That, Socrates, is precisely the profession I profess. In that case, I said, you have acquired a great system, if indeed you have acquired it. For I should not say anything else to a man like you except what I am really thinking. Indeed, I do not believe that this can be taught. Protagoras, yet when you say that it can, I do not know how to doubt you. But it is only right that I explain the reason I believe that it cannot be taught or procured by people from other people. Indeed, I agree, as do the other Greeks, that the Athenians are wise. Now I observe that whenever we gather together in the assembly and the city needs to engage in some activity related to construction works, they send for the builders to advise on what they are going to construct. When the issue is shipbuilding, they send for shipwrights, and the same goes for all other subjects which they regard as capable of being learned and taught. Yet if anyone else attempts to advise them, someone whom they believe to be no practitioner, even if he is extremely beautiful and wealthy and of noble lineage, they accept him none more than that. No, they ridicule him and cause a commotion until either he himself gives up on his attempt to speak because he has been shouted down, or the attendants drag him away or carry him out of the behest of the officials. So on issues where they believe that a skill is involved, this is how they proceed. However, once they need to decide on the administration of the city, it is all the same to them if the person who stands up to advise them about these issues is a carpenter, a blacksmith, a cobbler, a merchant, a ship owner, rich or poor, of noble lineage or none. It makes no difference. No one rebukes these speakers for this, as they did in the previous case, for trying to give advice without having learned about the matter from anyone, or without even having a teacher. For the Athenians obviously do not believe that this subject can be taught. What is more, this conclusion applies not only in the communal aspect of the city, but also in private. For the wisest and most excellent of our citizens are unable to pass on this excellence, which they possess, to anyone else. Indeed, Pericles, the father of these two young men here, educated them well and truly in the subject for which he found teachers. Yet when it comes to matters on which he himself is wise, he neither instructs himself nor hands them over to anyone else. Rather, they go about grazing like sacred cattle, perhaps somehow stumbling upon excellence of their own accord, or take Clinians, if you like, the younger brother of Alcibiades here, the very same man, Pericles, acting as his guardian, was somehow afraid lest he be corrupted by Alcibiades. So he separated the two brothers and placed Clinias with the family of Arpharon to be educated. But before 6 months had elapsed, he gave him back, at a loss as to what he should do with him. And I can recount a whole range of other examples of those who are themselves good, but have never yet made someone else good, either a member of their own family or someone from outside it. So Protagoras, when I look at all this, I come to the view that excellence cannot be taught. Yet, when I hear the assertions of yours, I waver and think you are talking sense, because I regard you as highly experienced, very learned person who has made discoveries of his own. Therefore, if you can prove to us more clearly that excellence is teachable, do not begrudge us as a response. Prove it. So, what we want to figure out is that, is excellence teachable? And we want proof. So, as he says here, but it is only right that I explain the reason I believe that it cannot be taught or procured by people from other people. Indeed, I agree, as do the other Greeks, that the Athenians are wise. It cannot, but the main thing is that it cannot be procured. Well, Socrates, he said, I shan't begrudge you, but as an older man addressing his juniors, should I make my point by telling you a story or by working through an argument? Now most of the gathering replied that he should proceed in whatever manner he wished. Well, said he, I think I would be more pleasing to tell you a story. Now, there was once a time when, although there were gods, there were no mortal creatures of any kind. So this is a story that he's going to use to prove that excellence can be taught. Okay. Now, there was once a time, although there were gods, there were no mortal creatures of any kind. And when the moment of destiny came for the birth of the mortal creatures, the gods formed them within the earth, from earth and fire, which they mixed together, and from whatever mixes with earth and fire. Once they were ready to bring the creatures forth into light, they directed Prometheus and Epimetheus, yes, to equip them and assign powers to each as appropriate. Epimetheus asked Prometheus if he himself could do the allocating. Once they have done the allocating, you should do the inspecting, he said. And having persuaded his brother of this, he made the allocations. To some he assigned strength without adding speed, others who were weaker he equipped with speed. Some of them he armed, and he devised an alternative means of preservation for those who were given an unarmed nature. To those whom he kept small, he allotted winged flight, or an underground dwelling place, while those whom he caused to grow large and preserved through their own largeness. He also attributed the other faculties, balancing them equally in this way. As he was making these arrangements, he took care that no kind of creature should become extinct. When he had provided them with sufficient means of avoiding mutual annihilation, he devised a protection against the season sent from Zeus, by wrapping them in thick hair and hard skin, adequate defenses against the cold, that could also protect them from the heat, so that as they retired to their lair, these same defenses would serve for each other as their own self-grown bedding. Some he shod with hooves, others with hard, bloodless skin. Then he devised various kinds of food for the various species, the pasture of the earth for some, fruit from trees or roots for others, and to some he gave other creatures as food for them to eat. These he graced with very few offspring, but he made the creatures that were eaten by them highly productive as a means of preserving the species. Now, since Epithetus was not wise, he carelessly lavished all the powers upon the irrational creatures, so he was left with the human race still unprovided for, and he was at a loss as to what he should do. In his perplexity, Prometheus arrived to inspect the distribution, and he saw that although the other creatures were suitably provided for in all respect, the human race was naked, unshod, and had no bedding, and was unarmed. But by now the day of destiny was at hand, on which human beings too had come forth from the earth into the light. Prometheus, gripped by perplexity as to what sort of protection he might find for the human soul, stole the wisdom that resides in the skill of Hephaestus and Athena, along with fire, for it is impossible for anyone to attain the skill, or for it to be useful without fire, and so is that he bestows the gift upon humanity. Now, that is how humanity came to possess the wisdom of everyday life. Yet they did not possess wisdom in civic affairs, for that belonged to Zeus. There was no time for Prometheus to enter the high pinnacle that is the abode of Zeus, and the guardsmen of Zeus were too fearsome anyway. But he entered unnoticed into the shared workshop of Athena and Hephaestus, wherein they practiced their skill, stole the skill that works through fire, the one that belongs to Hephaestus, and the other skill that belongs to Athena, and bestowed them upon humanity. And as a consequence of this, the life of man is well provided for. And yet it is said that because of Epithemus, Prometheus was prosecuted afterwards for theft. Since humanity had shared in a divine portion, firstly due to their kinship with the god, they were only living creatures who acknowledged the gods, and as they set about constructing altars the statues of gods. Then, by means of this skill, they quickly produced articulate sounds and names, and invented houses, clothing, shoes, bedding, and the production of food from the earth. Once they had been provided for in this way, the humans did not live communally at first, and there were no cities. So they were being ravaged by the wild beasts because they were weaker than the beasts in every aspect. And although their skill, craftsmanship was enough to secure them a source of food, it fell short when it came to warfare against the wild animals. For they did not yet possess skill in civic affairs, of which warfare is a part. So they sought to come together and preserve themselves by building cities. Now, when they came together, they acted unjustly towards one another, and they lacked skill in civic affairs, so they were dispersed once again and subject to destruction. So this is also very similar to the Gang of Thieves argument in Book 1 in the Republic. So let's write that down. I don't think that's how it's spelled, Thieves. No. Then Zeus, fearing that our race might perish completely, sent Hermes bearing respect and justice to humanity, so that there would be order in the cities, and conjoining bonds of friendship. So Hermes asked Zeus in what manner he should bestow justice and respect upon humanity. Should I allocate these in the same way that the skills were allocated? They were distributed so that one person possessing medical skill was enough to treat numerous laymen, and the same applied to other skilled persons. So should I also distribute justice and respect among the humans in this way, or should I allocate it to all of them? To all, replied Zeus, and let them have a share in it. For cities will not come into existence if only a few people share in the skill, as happens with others, with other skills, and set down the law from me, whereby anyone unable to share in justice and respect is to die as a pestilence of the city. Accordingly, for these reasons, Socrates, everyone, Athenians included, believes that few advisors should be involved whenever the deliberation relates to excellence in buildings or some other skilled work. And if anyone outside of that few offers advice, they do not put up with it. And you have said, quite reasonably in my view. Yet when it comes to advice on excellence in civic affairs, where it is necessary to proceed entirely on the basis of justice and sound-mindedness, they quite reasonably accept contributions from all men, because it is appropriate for everyone to share in this excellence. Otherwise, there would be no cities at all. This is the explanation for this, Socrates. In case you think you are being deceived, please accept this additional proof that the whole world really does believe that all men have a share of justice, and also civic excellence in general. In the case of other excellences, as you say yourself, if someone claims to be a good flute player, or to be good at any other skill which he is not good at, they laugh at him or get angry with him, and his relatives come and rebuke him for being insane. Yet in the case of justice and excellence in civic affairs generally, if a person whom they know to be unjust should himself declare the truth about himself in front of everyone, they regard this as madness in such circumstances, even though in the previous case, flute playing, they regard speaking the truth as sound-mindedness. Indeed, they say that everyone should claim to be just, regardless of whether they are not. And anyone who is not pretending to be just is insane, because it is necessary for everyone to share in it some way or another, if they are to live with their fellow men. So they quite reasonably accept all men as advisors on this particular excellence, because they believe that everyone has a share in it. That is all I have to say on that issue. Okay, so what I'll do is Next time, we will read from here. But that was a very good reading session so far. We're 13 pages into the Protagoras of 47 pages. Till next time, take care.